Hi everyone, I am Jogu Uday Kiran. Currently, I am pre-final student at SR University. We are here to discuss about AWS Lambda, which is one of the service provided by Amazon Web Services. AWS compute offerings. In this slide, I listed the three compute offerings provided by AWS services. The first one is Amazon EC2, virtual servers in the cloud. Amazon ECS, container management service for running Docker containers on EC2, and Amazon Lambda, which is a serverless computing service where we can run and manage code without bothering about the architecture and no need to put up hardware settings and all the things. Let's talk about Lambda. In this slide, I will give a quick introduction what the AWS Lambda is. AWS Lambda is a serverless compute platform where stateless code execution in response to events. History of AWS Lambda. In early 2000s, traditional company specific data centers. In the early 2000s, like we set up the hardware architecture, the data centers in hardware to get the data being stored, and it took lots of space and manual power is to be necessary and to be monitor all the things. And mid 2000s, Amazon EC2 Elastic Compute Cloud will came into the picture, and it no need to set up the hardware architecture, just we can run on the virtual servers, but we need to monitor in this EC2 while the data is processing. And in 2014, uh, AWS Lambda came into the picture, and it will runs on serverless computing service. So it adds more weightage to all the people to access the services easily. Typical workflow. First, we need to create a function, and then we need to write a code and then deploy and then run your function. As I said earlier, the function plays a major role in AWS Lambda functioning, where like we can process the data accordingly. And the three I listed the three things under the steps. The first one is C++, Python, and Java. These are the these are the three services where you can deploy and run the code, and the programming languages where same it will follow as AWS Lambda. For example, now I need to write a code in Python and in or in Java. Just I will use the functions and I will write the code and I will deploy the code and execute. That's it. But I know don't need to bother about the architecture and all the internal things what are being processed. Just we need to look after the functions and writing and executing the code, and the rest of all the things will be monitored and run by AWS Lambda. That's the more specialty, and it adds a weightage to use to grab the more users. Working with Lambda, flexible use, call or send events, integrated with other AWS services, build serverless ecosystems. Flexible authorization, securely grant access to resources, including virtual private clouds. Fine graded control over what can call your functions. We can have the control access like to call the function. Working with Lambda, stateless, persist data using Amazon S3, RDS, Elastic Cache, or non-relational database. No affinity to infrastructure, can't log into host. Uh, Non-relational database means Amazon DynamoDB. It will available in the private subnet in VPC, virtual private cloud architecture, where it adds more security, and it will prevent from the internet traffic. Monitoring and logging, built in metrics for request latency errors and throttles. Built in logging with CloudWatch. Amazon CloudWatch is one of the service to monitor all the things which will done internally in the architecture. Common uses, data triggers, trigger functions on data updates in S3, SNS, etc. For example, if we want to send any messages via mails or SMS to users, then AWS Lambda will trigger SNS to share these messages, and AWS Lambda will trigger S3 for processing the data, and again it will be stored in a S3, and where users can get the data, and those processed data can be helpful to utilize in other applications. Big data, Real-time data processing, streaming data updates using Kinesis. Amazon Kinesis is the service which monitors the real-time streaming data, and we will collect information from Amazon Kinesis, and it will be processed in AWS Lambda. Control systems. Customize responses and workflows to state changes in AWS. Serverless backends. Execute server-side backend logic, where we can use AWS Lambda in the backend for applications. Why is Lambda is useful? We have more benefits by using AWS Lambda, but I listed the few in this slide. No servers to manage. There is no requirement to maintain servers for using this service, as it is serverless computing service, which adds more weightage. Auto scaling. Um, it will scales the code accordingly for the processing of the data, and that processing data it helps for the users to work on the other applications. Pay for what you use. AWS Lambda will charge only the service request, how many we will make from our end, that's it. But it will not charge more, and it is the economical, it adds economical value to the customers. Performance. It has more performance, and it will handles the internet traffic and all the things, where application can flow smoothly. Service integrations. It will integrate with other AWS services such as S3 and Kinesis, etc., which adds more weightage and more useful to the developers. Easy to use. As it is serverless computing service, no need to bother about the service, the servers and monitoring and architecture. Just we are using deploying code by using functions and retrieving the processing data, which will helps us to use on other functions. Dynamic data ingestion with AWS Lambda plus S3. In this, I kept the process flow. What happens when Lambda and S3 combines? New object uploaded. Object, it means the storage. We Which is uploaded in the S3. Amazon S3 is a storage bucket which stores the data, and then it will process to AWS Lambda for the processing of the object. Then it will interact again with the S3, because internally in AWS Lambda it will runs the code, and it will process the data, and then that processed data will be saved in the S3, and again it will interact with DynamoDB, which is a non-relational database available in the private subnet of virtual private cloud, and it will update the file in the DynamoDB too, so that with the SNS, by receiving messages to the users, they can get the processed data. And the processed data has many benefits. We will go with those information in the next slides. Customers using S3 and Lambda. Again, like the same process flow, the objects will be stored in S3 buckets, and it will be processed. It will be processed and runs code in the Lambda, and again the process data will be saved in the S3 buckets. Here is the list of companies using S3 and Lambda: Thomson Reuters, Simplify, Netflix, the Seattle Times, FireEye. And these are the benefits I listed out by using the process data: watermarking, thumbnail creation, transcoding, indexing and deduplication, aggregation and filtering, pre-processing, content validation, WF updates. Dynamic data ingestion with S3 plus Kinesis. Amazon Kinesis is the real-time streaming data. Like we will monitor that, which handles the real-time streaming data, and Amazon Kinesis will be processed to Lambda, as it will runs code and it will process the data. Again, it will goes these information into Amazon SNS, to alert the no notifications and to share the messages, and these all will be monitored by Amazon CloudWatch. Amazon CloudWatch is a service which need to be monitor all the internal things architecture, and it will monitors all the things. And AWS Lambda with SNS, we will share the messages, SMS, emails, and alerts, etc. Customers using Lambda plus Kinesis. ConnectWise, NativeX, AdRule, these three companies I listed out what they using Lambda plus Kinesis. and kinesis will be processed to Lambda, and then Lambda will be processed and aggregate statistics. Apply custom logic to process data being uploaded through kinesis stream, client activity tracking system, metrics generation, data cleansing, log filtering and routing, index and searching, live alarms and notifications. What I said earlier is that we can send the notifications and alarms if the requirement meets. So this adds the more advantage to AWS Lambda. It's one of the main advantage. It will it will integrate with the other services as SNS as well as S3. Lambda powered by APIs and API call flow. First, mobile application. We will get requests from mobile applications, websites, and services through internet. It will reaches the Amazon Cloud Front. Amazon Cloud Front will be close to these end users to get information as soon as possible, and it will be processed to API gateway. API gateway, it means it will handle the internet traffic, and then it will flows to API gateway caching. If the caching process is be done in Amazon API gateway itself, then just it will retrieve the data rather than processing to save the computational services, and then it will share to the end services, which is EC2 and Lambda. Lambda is to process the upload and process to get the process data, as well as EC2 means the computational service where it meets the requirements, and then Amazon Cloud Watch, which it will monitor all the architecture, what happening, and if there any necessary needs, it will be notified. Lambda plus Cognito and mobile apps. In this slide, we will discuss about the backends, how we can build well, for like mobile applications. No backend service, no problem. We can use AWS Lambda to build backend services. You can use Lambda as backend for mobile apps, easy personalization for users and devices. I listed out the flowchart here. First, from the mobile application, we need to we need to first contact Amazon Cognito, where it will give the identity for the user, and then after getting identifiable, it retraces back to the mobile, and then with the identity we need to log in to access the Amazon AWS Lambda, and then we need to assume as a execution role, we need to assume as a IAM role, and then we can handle the databases and all the internal backend things, and again this data will be retrieved to the mobile. By these, we can say that AWS Lambda will be helpful for the mobile backends too. Users of AWS Lambda. Here are the list of MNCs which is used by the service AWS Lambda. Like in the world, there are many companies, but I listed the few are Netflix, Autodesk, Udemy, Square Enix. In this session, we learned about AWS Lambda and the services benefits, what adds more weightage to the users as well as developers, and how it will integrate with the AWS services, which plays a major role in bringing more advantages. So, thank you for joining this session. I hope you all gain more information regarding AWS. Thank you so much.